I am Mudita, and welcome back to Satisfactory. In the last video, I finished up Phase 4 by building some factories to make magnetic field generators and thermal propulsion rockets. I'm not making a lot of these, but it was enough to get it done in a pretty reasonable time frame. I finished the video by sending off the space elevator for the second to last time. I'm now in the final phase of the game. If my goal was to just make the minimum required parts and send off the elevator for the last time to beat the game, I could easily do it with the amount of power I'm generating right now. But where is the fun in that? I'm not going to be breaking any records or doing a max build of anything, but I do want to ramp things up here at the end. I'll be going nuclear. And because I love the concept and I think making the giant factories fun, I'll be doing the full Ficsonium route for no waste. Before I can tackle that, I need to unlock milestones and start building some bigger basic factories to provide some necessary parts. Which brings us back to the hub, where we start every new phase. But you'll notice today I'm starting a little farther away from the hub than normal. And that's because if I zoom in, we've got some celebrations going on. And holy cow, is it loud. I turned down my game volume, but it is still, I don't know if there's a specific one for just this, because whew. I'm glad there's dynamic sound or whatever you call it. It's just a tad loud, and I couldn't find a specific slider just for that. Sincerely, congratulations, Coffee Stain. It's a fantastic game, and I wish many, many more years of success for you. It's a great celebration. I love all of the details that they put into it. I just wish I could turn down the sound. That's all. So to make recording the video a little bit easier, I went ahead and turned off the seasonal events. We've got progress to make. Tier 9. Like every other phase, I need to unlock the first one before I can even look at anything else. Everything else is going to require the new parts that I'm unlocking. So let's go ahead and knock this out. Thank you, Dimensional Depot. And it's just that easy. And this is why I like automating everything from the previous phase, because now once I'm here, I can hit the ground running.
Milestone reached. The converter uses strange alien matter, abbreviated to SAM, to break down and transform materials at their most fundamental levels. I am sure even you can appreciate the power to manipulate atomic bonds. Most importantly, you are now able to locally create Ficsite, a highly adaptable synthetic metal, ideal for any kind of construction. It is everything we need to save the day, and perhaps its admirable qualities can inspire you.
Well, that is exciting. If I pull up the codex and go to parts, it always adds the newest unlocked ones to the very end. Here are the new parts I've just added. And the great thing about the codex is it really does simplify some of these things. So we can see the difference between the iron, aluminum, and Caterium ingots. But for me, I'm much more interested in the reanimated SAM portion. I think there's probably less uranium, but SAM is right up there with the most valuable resource, especially here at the end game. So as I can see, 2 to 1 is the best ratio if I use aluminum. That's what I'll be using for this one. And then to turn them into Trigons, there's only one recipe, so that's nice and easy. And then we come down here. We've got diamonds, which, oh, look at that. There's a whole bunch of options. The default is not great. If I want to make 30 diamonds, which, yeah, let's say we do, it's gonna take 600 coal. Not my favorite option, but thankfully, we've got more. Time crystals, there's only one. And I don't even need to look at those for a while. So first order of business, let's hit up the MAM. I need to start working my way through all these hard drives. Now I'm gonna hop in my train and head down south. We're back in the blue crater. Originally, I was gonna do the Trigons first because I have all the recipes for them. And that's gonna be a little bit closer to the aluminum factory, so I don't have to ship them anywhere. I can just use a belt for that. But on my very first scan, I got the alternate recipe I was looking for, so I decided to take my train all the way down here, and we're going to start with the diamonds and the time crystal factory, because this is just a great recipe. I'm not sure why it reads like this in this menu, but 200 crude oil to 40 diamonds is a pretty nice ratio. I used to think oil was much more scarce than it is, and that I was gonna run out. There is a lot of oil on the map. You can definitely run out, but there's also really efficient ways to use the oil and make it last a pretty long time. So I'm not too worried about using a good amount of oil towards my diamonds. As far as the oil nodes go over here, I've used a good amount of them. I've used this one, that one, and there's still 2 pure nodes back there, but I'm not going to use those quite yet. There's actually 2 nodes inside this factory. There's been an oil extractor on this node this whole time, but this pipe goes to nowhere. This is a pure node, so I feel like I might as well get the full 600 out of it. It really shouldn't be too hard to bring that pipe and bring it out. We'll probably go up and then send it out just right next to the belt. I think it's funny that you can place them just directly on a door. But the great thing about having a wall there already is it's pretty easy to fake the wall hole. So we can put one there. And then I can do the same thing on this side because I can just nudge it towards me. And then to the side. There we go. And then I'll just make sure to add the pipe. We'll probably have that pipe just run straight out here. And I don't need a big factory. Even though I'm getting 600 crude oil out of that thing, I only need 2 particle accelerators to deal with this. The plan is the pipe will come right down here till probably about there. And then we've got a bunch of foundations to work with. So as you'll kind of notice, these are ever so slightly offset. These are 2 meters over from the world grid. So everything is aligned the same. I just nudge them over 2 meters so that once this drops down, it'll be able to go in a straight line, and now it's at the very center of the foundations. On this floor, I'm going to place the particle accelerators. One will be facing this way, and the other one will be spun 180 degrees. Now I can select my recipe. I've got my oil-based diamonds. Each particle accelerator is only going to be overclocked to 150%. Each one will intake 300 crude oil, so half of the pipe, and I'll get 60 diamonds in return. Pipe work for this is going to be pretty easy. I am just going to find the very center in between these two. And then I'll just use good old straight mode, and it can get plugged in just like that. And now I just need to go up. So definitely want to give myself plenty of clearance. But luckily for me, the first stage is taking the liquid and turning it into a solid. So now I get to take the solid and go up. And that means no pumps required. I'm going to go with the full foundation as a walkway that goes all the way around the factory. And same thing on the second floor. For the machines, I think this is all the space I need. Converters aren't the smallest, but they're not really the biggest. They're exactly a 2x2. One foundation here in the front. Should be plenty of space. Now let's go ahead and set the recipe. These are taking the diamonds and turning them into time crystals. Only one recipe. And these are going to be completely overclocked. So each one will intake 30 diamonds and I'll get 15 time crystals. Go ahead and place second one there and then 2 same layout on this side. Alright, and well, belt work is going to be nice and easy for this factory. I'm just going to place a splitter right in the very middle. Each one of these only needs 30, so mark 1 belts for everything. And then I'm just going to add a floor hole here. Mark 1 lift. Same on this side. And then I can come down here. I'm just going to drop it all the way down. Angle it towards the output. And connect the belt. Same thing for this side. We just angle it the other way. And same thing. So that will feed the 60 diamonds. And they will head up here and split 30 and 30. Each one of these will output 15 time crystals. So now I can group these all up into 1 belt. And what I think I'm going to do is just add a little section out here. Just going to make a little balcony. So I think from here I can get everything grouped together. And let's see how well I can make this fit. Even though I need these for belting materials, I honestly just don't see myself going through a ton of time crystals. So I think just one dimensional depot with one storage is probably going to be enough. And who knows, maybe I'm going to regret this and have to come back and revisit it because it's just not uploading fast enough. I don't see myself doing gigantic belt highways with just all Mark 6 belts, so I think I'll be okay. Obviously, I'll need my smart splitter. And we're going to go into here and into here. And the nice thing about this layout is I've still got plenty of space. I'm going to add a sink to this side. The truth is, I really don't need 60 per minute time crystals headed into here. I want that many to head in there now because it's going to fill up my buffer faster, and I've got some unlocks that are going to need some, so it works out. But later on, what I'm most likely going to do is add a splitter in here, and I'm going to end up only sending either 30 or maybe even only 20 per minute into my storage. And then conveniently, right behind the factory, this belt has 720 petroleum coke on there. Even if I wasn't about to unlock the Mark 6 belts, there's enough room on this one to be able to squeeze those extra time crystals and get them over into the train station. And that's it. Time crystals are nice and simple, which honestly, for being in phase 5, it's kind of surprising. Going from aluminum being the new thing in the last phase to trigons and time crystals, actually kind of easy. Now I get to spend some time doing some decorations and running power throughout the factory, and I'll see you in a second. Welcome back to my new time crystal factory. Thankfully, it's a real little guy, so it didn't actually take all that long. Let's go on a quick little tour. Like I mentioned, I wanted to make a little balcony, and this is one of the things that I've been kind of missing in a bunch of my factories, especially since I am using the mod to be able to fly. It is kind of nice to be able to just swoop in. I went with just making a giant T for the time crystals on each of the sides. And what I learned is this is a really interesting color, and coated concrete is funny. This is just the Ficsite primary on the beam, so I was trying to match that color pretty closely. But the thing is, if you use that color on coated concrete, it's pretty different. So the bright orange, it doesn't even look bright orange here, is what I used for the signs, I think. But the bright Ficsite, this is what I got closest, and the number was actually 10. So I had to just keep typing in different ones, because if you type in like 1, that looks pretty orange. But if I select it, that's pretty red. And I would just keep trying different numbers. So 4 starts to look pretty yellow, but we're getting there. And 10 definitely looks yellow here, but on here, it looks pretty good. If I paint the beam with it, it is definitely yellow. So sometimes you just got to play around with the colors, and they just look different on the different materials. I thought about adding another hypertube to go from there just straight to the time crystal factory, but because of where it's at, it was going to be a really long and kind of weird route. So I decided, since I already am branching off of this one to be able to go to my package rocket fuel, I figured I would just let you take this hypertube, and then if you just come to the complete opposite side of where the elevator is, then we can take this one on a nice little curvy path down to here. And now we're into the time crystal factory. For lighting, I went with large billboards, and I centered them right on the particle accelerators. Other than that, pretty basic floor. Just went with asphalt all the way around. And then we've got our glass foundation here in the middle so that I can walk all the way to my elevator. Nice simple factory, only 2 floors. Which brings us to the converters floor. Kept it pretty simple and pretty in theme with a lot of the other factories that are around here for the roof. We've just got our asphalt walkway that takes us all the way around. And of course a throughput monitor for the final product. And back on the bottom floor, I just went with 2 gate holes here at the end. And because the levels of these 2 factories were offset by 1 meter, if it was 2 or 4, then I could use either just the ramps or the stairs and easily connect the 2. But if you're off by an odd number of meters, well, I had to add some stairs so that brings you up to the right level, and then you can use the walkway to get back here. Nothing crazy, but it's nice to have just a clean, simple, small little factory tucked over here. Well, I've got more milestones to unlock. Let's get this thing started. I turned on the oil extractor so the oil pipe is completely full. Anytime I'm dealing with fluids, I much prefer to just let the initial pipe completely fill up. But even more so if I'm trying to get the max flow rate. So since I want to move 600 in the pipe, I feel like this is just the best way to do it. Upstairs, the machines are already turned on because the elevator has power, so I was able to just connect that floor. This floor, however, I didn't want these machines to turn on yet because, well, that would start everything. So I just need to make this connection, and then I'll turn on the particle accelerators and get everything going, which is honestly going to happen pretty much instantly. And here we go. And just like that, I've got 60 time crystals per minute. Not too shabby. They do stack to 200, but at 60 per minute, that is going to fill up my dimensional depot and that storage container in no time. To complete any more of the milestones though, I need one more part, and that's those Trigons. Taking a look at the map, we are right down here in the blue crater. If I turn on my resources, got a little bit of a better view. Looking at my radar coverage, I've definitely got some big gaps here in the middle. Ah yes, that is exactly what this little lake was missing. Isn't that right, Bean? He'll check it out in due time. Now if I look at the radar tower coverage, it's much better for this area. I thought about putting this one over here, because then it would at least cover part of the swamp, but there's no way that it would cover all of the swamp. So I think the swamp will just get its own radar tower once I finally build something out there. Now I actually have good coverage of this little stretch. And I can see I've got a couple of SAM nodes. And that's kind of what I was looking for. That way if it's close, I can avoid using a train. A short belt is just easier. Even though that's an impure node, I think I can make more than enough Trigons with it. I'm standing on top of my aluminum factory, and the SAM node is just right over there. Let's quickly take a look at the spreadsheet. For this, I decided I wanted to just maximize the SAM node. Just like I did with the time crystals and the crude oil, since I was going to use the node, I just wanted to use all of it. I'll be able to find a home for those time crystals, just like I will for these Trigons here. I can't really make too many. If I completely max out the SAM, the numbers don't actually line up fantastic, but if I double the amount, it's actually pretty nice. But instead of using 2 impure nodes, I'm still just going to use the 1. The reason the reanimated SAM row is highlighted purple, because I'm going to sloop it. Another miner is in its housing. At first, I was thinking I'd be able to build the factory just right in here, because I don't need a lot of space. As you saw in the spreadsheet, there aren't that many machines required for this. And even though I do have just lots of options on how I could do this, the aluminum ingots are being made right there. However, if I just go right over here, they all go along that little bus into the train station. And then from there, I do all of my different load balancing and ratio splits and all that fun stuff. The problem is, it would be really convenient just to take the aluminum ingots just right from this factory and then just send them over to this one. But I can't easily do that because I'm using all 3 of those belts in some form. So if I take anything out before it goes to the train station, that's going to screw up all the math that I've already done, and I'm just going to have to redo it. All of that just to say it's going to be a lot easier to take my aluminum ingots out of the train station. And so belting it all the way over up to here seems like a bit much, especially because I am going to be making extra of these Trigons, which means those are most likely going to end up going back to the train. Now, this isn't a very far distance, and so I'm just going to compromise because I do like this location. I'm just not going to build it all the way back here. Instead, as you probably already guessed because of these foundations, I'm going to base it just right here. And that'll make the belt work a little less messy. I won't have to bring that belt of aluminum up into here somehow. The simpler solution would be just to bring that SAM and go all the way over to here and just bring things much closer. I could easily build this in just a small little area. But no, I kind of want to just build it on the side of this weird rocky pillar thing. Now, because old habits die hard, I'm going to build this factory in the same way I build all of them. I'm going to start with the basic stuff at the bottom and work my way up. This factory could very easily get flipped the other way around because of where all the materials are. Let me build it and you'll see. On the bottom floor, I just need one constructor. This thing is going to be doing reanimated SAM, fully overclocked, and summer slooped. This is my first permanent usage of the summer sloop. Up until now, I pretty much only use them temporarily. And on the top floor of my home factory, right next to my hub, I have a whole bunch of constructors that have summer sloops in them to handle the power slugs, the remains, and the biomass. But those have always been more or less temporary. If I ever needed those summer sloops, I would take them out. But this one is here to stay. And that will give me 150 reanimated SAM out of this one impure node. And this is again going to be a really basic factory, so I actually think I only need 4 foundations probably. I don't even know if I need that much space. Actually, let's go ahead and bring that down one. Yeah, it's got plenty of space. Second floor is going to have my converter. I don't think I said it over at the Time Crystal Factory, but I love these endgame machines. They all just look so cool. Using the aluminum version, this thing is going to be completely overclocked. That'll take my 150 reanimated SAM. I just need to bring over 300 aluminum ingots, and I'll get 75 Ficsite ingots. So for this, it won't be the absolute cleanest looking way to do it. This needs to be a Mark III. And so the way I'm going to do this, because they don't quite line up, but I don't really want to do a little squiggly belt to get that in here. So instead, I'm just going to face this one this way. I'll just take another lift, line it up here at the bottom, and then when I bring this one up and spin it around, they'll just connect. And then this one will just need 300 of the aluminum. And that'll get plugged in on this side, and then from that, we'll probably bring a belt just right along the edge of the building. Well, let's go ahead and go up another floor. We'll make sure this one has enough breathing room. Because the converter has its output coming out this way, that is going to come up probably right about there, I think. Just make sure, yep, doesn't hit any of the rocks, so that spot looks good. And that is going to go into a splitter. This is the only floor that I need multiple machines. I'm going to go ahead and just center them right there. These 3 are all doing the Trigons. All 3 will be completely overclocked. 25 in, 75 Trigons out. I'm going to go ahead and just make things nice and symmetrical. On this side, we need Mark IIs. So that'll be 75 on each one of these for a grand total of 225. Now up here is where I need a little bit more room, but that's alright. Just going to add on a little extra section. But this time I'm going to do it a little bit different. Don't want to do things the same way. Try not to take up too much extra space. So there will be the storage. And then on the other side, if we can get this to fit, I think the belt will miss that. Oh, that works for me. And then I'll do the same thing. So we'll do a smart splitter. Any to the right, overflow to the left. And I could leave that as any, but we'll just switch it to none. So like I mentioned before, I easily could have done this backwards, and then I wouldn't have this part overhanging, because the SAM is going to be coming from right up here. So the path that it's going to end up taking is it's going to drop down there, and then it'll snake around here. It's going to plug into the factory right around here. So it would have been easy to basically just flip-flop this top floor with the bottom floor. And then I wouldn't have this part that's overhanging. But to be honest, I really don't mind, because I have an idea for this area, and it gives me an excuse to come up with a new blueprint. From here, there's not a whole lot left to do besides the decoration and running power throughout the factory. I need a belt to run from that miner over to here, and then a little bit of load balancing, but I need exactly 300 aluminum ingots, so that's going to be easy to get. And I'll need to run that belt over to here. But thankfully, that's pretty close. Let me get to work, we'll go on a tour, and then we'll turn this sucker on. Welcome back to my new Ficsite Trigon Tower. Before we dive deeper into the main event, let's head back over to the train station. We need to check out where this aluminum is coming from. I decided to bolt on the supports for the belt just onto the side of the factory, and if we follow it back, we'll see that I already did something very similar to that. Right here with the hypertubes. So I basically just copied the same thing, and then I just used these existing ones to add the ceiling mounts and then run the belt just right underneath it. And that way, when we come over here, I did not plan this at all, but it worked out really nicely that I ended up with 2 open lanes because this belt originally wasn't here, but this lane right here is where another belt will go when I need those Trigons. I'll be able to just send them this way and onto the train. Let's go into the belly of the beast and show you the load balancing. It's already pretty chaotic down here. Thankfully, I didn't have to add on too much to that. This is a 600 belt of aluminum ingots. It's going into a splitter. Before this new factory, all I was using was this 200 belt and that was going off. And then I was just regrouping the 400 and that was going up to a sink. So I have a belt of 200 here. And this lift right here also has 200. So this 200 goes into a splitter. 100 of it gets grouped up with that 200. And now I've got my 300 and that goes off and into the Trigon Tower. The other 100 just goes up and into the sink. Gotta love when it's nice and simple. Nothing too fancy for the SAM. Just a lift to get it down here and then good old curve mode to make a little S. Another lift. And then into the factory. So this drops all the way down and into that very first floor constructor. Since I had so much space, I just try to fill up a bunch of it with catwalks that just go all the way around. And I've still got my elevator to run up and down the whole factory. And it just makes it really convenient to be able to run the power along the ceiling. And so obviously one of them is powering the sink here. But there's also a power connection at the very top that goes into this thing. So like I mentioned, I wanted to make a new blueprint. And so I made it too tall. So let's just go place a random one. I realized if we take a look at my power grid, it's going to start to look a lot more like this now that I've got converters and particle accelerators going. No way to avoid it. Even though my production and my consumption, not anywhere close right now. But with these, I just want to ensure that I give myself even that extra little bit of wiggle room just in case I ever end up getting close and start dipping into it. So I thought it would be a good idea to start adding more power storage throughout my world. But the one thing I would like to avoid if I can is just building a just giant brick of, 100, 200, or 1,000 of these things. Instead, I would like to try to spread them out and just add a couple here and there to different factories. So by making it a support like this, originally I figured I was going to use blue, but then I realized, well, Trigons are all orangish, so I went with the orange. But this right here is as close as you can get them to stack on top of each other. They're 12 meters tall, and even if you try to nudge it down a half a meter, it won't let you place it. So these are as tightly stacked as you can get them, and a little bit at the very top of it will even clip into the foundation. But I don't really mind with these. I still get to see the charge on the side, which is the important part to me. But this right here is pretty easily customizable. I can very easily just change the color of any of these. Or if I want a very different look, I could switch these all to Ficsite. If I wanted to do a giant brick of these things, I could fit way more in a smaller amount of space. But I really like the idea of trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I wanted this section to have some sort of support, so now I get to add, albeit only 4 batteries, but that's 4 batteries I didn't have before. And now my factory is a little bit more supported. On the converter floor, I decided to do the same thing with the catwalks, so those run all the way around the outsides, and then right here, I just went around the lift. Instead of moving the lift to make that straighter, I'd much rather leave the lift where it is. And then here on the top floor, to accommodate the elevator, I needed to make my belts a little bit more squiggly. And sure, I could have moved the splitter up and it would have just avoided all of those problems. But I'd like the spacing. No windows in this factory. The only glass I'm using is right here for the roof. Instead of walls and windows, I just went with a whole bunch of pillars and painted them the really bright white. I actually meant to go with the 4-meter signs, but by the time I realized it, I had already placed them all and just didn't feel like changing it. Every once in a while, it's nice to switch up the style and look, but close enough that it doesn't stand out too much with the other factories. Like I said earlier, I've got milestones to complete. Let's get this thing started. I only need to do 2 things to get this started. I need to connect power from here to here, and then I need to go down there and delete the smart splitter. This should be another quick one again. Let's see how long it takes. Now that this is being made, let's send in the aluminum. I have so many triangles now. When there's only 5 total machines and 4 of them are constructors, the factory gets up to 100% really quickly. Now I have way more of both Trigons and Time Crystals than I need, and thankfully that'll help me turn in these next milestones. Since I'm making 225 a minute, probably don't need to wait around for these. I think there's actually some other resources I need to go grab before I head back home. I haven't completed the game yet, but this isn't my first time in Phase 5, and so I already know that you need a massive amount of iron plates and aluminum sheets to turn in peak efficiency so I can finally unlock the Mark 6 belts. Oh, that's exciting. So from my new Trigon tower, thankfully, I can just take a quick little trip right over here to the aluminum factory. Walk right around here, head down here, and I've got 2 bins of aluminum sheets. And that's the 5,000 aluminum sheets I need. Let's take my Hyper Tube back to the train station. I forgot that elevator takes me downstairs. This elevator takes me upstairs. Didn't quite have a spot to do it all at once. That's okay. Now I'm going to jump in my train and head out to the Rocky Desert and pick up 10,000 iron plates. And then I will see you back at the hub. It's always nice to come back to the hub because it usually means it's time to unlock something. I had to dump a whole bunch of my inventory and I couldn't even hold most of it. I'm even temporarily using one of my dimensional depot slots that can't fit all of those gas obelisks. So let's start to turn it in and see what I'm missing. Peak efficiency. These beautiful belts. I love them. Alright, 1200 shy. That's not too bad. And of course I can't count with those. Perfect. So let's grab 1,000 real quick, and then I just need to let that build up to another 200. Trigons and Time Crystals. And it's already up to 200. Perfect. Mark 6 belts, here I come.
Milestone reached. After close scrutiny, 2 problems were identified in Mark 5 conveyor belts. The first was the belt part, so force fields have been implemented in the Mark 6 instead, to maximize transfer speeds. The second problem is inefficient pioneers, but sadly no remedy is available for this severe impediment. Yet.
Don't say it like that, Ada. It sounds so ominous. Now when I go into the logistics tab, got my Mark 6 belts and lifts. And they just so happen to need Trigons and Time Crystals. And that is the main milestone that I wanted to get unlocked. Peak efficiency is a great name for that milestone because that is exactly what it is. I can finally get the full 1200 out of those nodes when I fully overclock those Mark III miners. Sometimes it feels like I've built a lot, and then I turn the resources on my map and I just have so much left to work with still. The end goal is obviously those space elevator parts, but for what I have planned, I don't have anywhere close to the amount of power I need. As I mentioned in the intro, I'm gonna go nuclear. I still need 1 or 2 milestones to unlock, but with the Mark VI belts, now I can start thinking about building the pieces I'll need for what should be my final power plant. I'm not gonna go crazy. In fact, I'm actually gonna try to use a lot of default recipes because I've never done it. I want to try to make this one a little bit easier to follow and hopefully not quite as involved, but still provide enough power. I still haven't decided where I'm going to make that power plant because there's still a list of factories I need to build beforehand. In the last video, I found out that I have completely run this factory dry of rubber. Still have a decent amount of plastic, but there is 0 rubber available out there. I've got about 100 left over down here in the blue crater, which is definitely not going to be enough for what I have planned. I think I'm going to build a newer plastic and rubber factory. Even though I still have some leftover plastic, I'm going to eventually need more. I'm going to build a similar one to the one that I already have out here, but this time I'm going to go bigger, and I have blenders, so I don't have to mess with the packages. So let me jump on my train, and I will see you out there. Back in the West Coast. And I decided to add a radar tower. I have no problem using the external websites. I use the Satisfactory calculator interactive map all the time. Even though I could look up where everything is, I just really like having it on the in-game map when I need it. All of my plastic and rubber have been coming from this one normal node. Like I mentioned, I want to go a little bit bigger with this one. Not too big though, so I am just going to double it. I'll be using the full 600 out of an overclocked pier node. And I think just right back here is going to be a good spot for it. It'll make it really easy to build over here to the train station, and it gives me plenty of room on the other side to deal with the other nodes. Because if I look back at the map, I'm going to use this one, but then I still have these 2 nodes that I'm sure I'm going to use eventually. So I think I'd rather leave this space down here open for those, and this one can just go on a pipe and we'll build the factory here. And now that I have resource well pressurizers, I have access to this one too now, which I believe gives me an extra 900 crude oil. For right now, just going to be using this one pure node though. There is plenty of space over here, so I'm going to avoid the arch, and that way the belts can go straight through it and into the train station. But there's also no reason to build it way out in the middle of the ocean, so I am going to try to keep it at least somewhat close here. So I'm going to lay out a whole bunch of foundations. I am going to go vertical, but it is still going to be easier just to do one whole process down here, which will be making the fuel, and then upstairs we'll do the plastic and rubber. But it's still going to take up a pretty good amount of space because I need a few machines to do this. Speaking of, let's go ahead and go over the plan real quick. Here's my spreadsheet. I'll be turning 600 crude oil into 800 heavy oil residue. I'll need 1600 water, but I can turn that into 1600 fuel. Like I mentioned before, I've got blenders now, so I don't have to mess with the whole package loop. This setup is going to be very familiar. It's going to look a lot like that other one, but hopefully I can make this one look at least a little bit different. But pretty much all the numbers are doubled. So in total, I'm going to be making 800 plastic and 1000 rubber. And that actually won't be enough to get me through to the end of the game, but it is enough to get me to where I'll have plenty of power. I got the bulk of the foundations laid out. Because I'm using a decent amount of machines and I have blenders now, I wanted to make new blueprints for this factory. But with the blenders and refineries, I probably could have gotten it to work in the Mark II blueprinter. However, I am in phase 5 now, so why struggle to make it work when I could just do a temporary setup and get this unlocked? I've got this, and this automated. How hard can neural quantum processors be, right? Well, to unlock those, I need the quantum encoding milestone. And, well, I've got all that. Start with the supercomputers. I'll just need to wait a little bit to get the extra 150, but hey, that'll take less than a minute.
Milestone reached. This is not a competition, but other pioneers, such as 83CKY and U531355, had already completed project assembly by this point. Ficsite was obviously wrong about you, but perhaps so was I. Regardless, you have finally unlocked the quantum encoder, which requires vast fluctuating power and excited photonic matter to produce highly complex parts. Do not make the same mistakes managing the resulting dark matter residue as you did other byproducts. Project part number 11, the AI expansion server, is now your highest priority. Galaxy-wide project management is taxing to even the most advanced among us, especially those who have to manage the less advanced. Like kittens and puppies, who are definitely still waiting for you to save them.
Oh, we're gonna save those kittens and puppies. One day. Alright, so we unlocked some new parts. First thing, we're gonna go over to the MAM and throw another hard drive in there. Next, we're gonna open up the codex. We'll go to parts and let's scroll to the bottom. All sorts of new fun stuff to play with. Only one recipe for the neural quantum processors. I have all of this automated. And hey, this you get to create out of thin air. You're basically just converting power into this excited photonic matter. So it is going to be a temporary setup. Oh, I always forget just how massive these are. My little side area that I've been using for my temporary setups is not quite big enough. I guess this is going to be really sloppy. I think I'm going to have to slap it on the side here. Give me a second to fiddle with this and I'll figure out a good enough layout. Oh, look at my beautiful sloppy temporary setup. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the particle accelerator partially hanging over. But like I said, it's temporary. Alright, so we got the quantum encoder. We just needed the time crystals, supercomputers, and the trigons as far as the materials. So I've just got 3 bins feeding those in. The converter is creating the excited photonic matter for me. That got to be just ever so slightly underclocked. Because I have the power grid, I decided to go ahead and overclock and sloop this. It is pretty amazing to think that I could probably only have 2 of these machines running like this and not trip my power grid. Just wild. So I'm getting 15 of the neural quantum processors, and then that 375 dark matter residue was originally just going into a fluid buffer, and then every couple minutes I would just flush it. But that very first hard drive that I scanned gave me this alternate recipe where I can just directly convert the dark matter residue straight into the dark matter crystals. So for now, I'm just going to store them because I can use those to probably jumpstart a system later on. And if I have too many, I can always sync them. I've got my 100, now I can turn in that milestone. Let's load it up.
Milestone reached. The Blueprint Designer Mark III allows for 20% increased blueprint size in all dimensions, for an overall 71.2% increase in volume. Sadly, I doubt we will see equivalent increases in your efficiency.
Hey, I can try. The great thing about the Mark III Blueprinter, even though it took 100 to unlock, it only needs 10 to build each one. And I don't normally leave them in places. I normally place it, I do what I need, and then I delete it. As long as I remember to put the extra ones back in my dimensional depot, I shouldn't actually have to create any more. Since there's only, 25 left in here, and it would be nice to have, a few extra laying around just in case. I'm going to let this create a few more, and then I'm just going to delete it all. Then I'll jump in my train, head back out to the west coast. We'll get this factory built with some big blueprints. The rough outline of the foundations are placed. Let's get to building some machines. I'm betting most of you can probably guess what these holes are for, but let me show you why I did it this way. Let me place a couple of my brand new Mark III blueprinters, and let me show you the new ones that I came up with. The bottom floor is going to create my fuel. Where I can, I really like to just make small little systems instead of trying to connect the entire thing. And I think to better explain that, let me show you my spreadsheet. So this is normally what I show you all. And it'll show you the total number of machines I need on the very end. So as you can see, I need 20 refineries for the heavy oil residue, and then an odd 26 2/3 refineries for the recycled plastic and rubber step. But this is usually the part that I add that I just don't show you. The two columns at the very right show you the amount of machines and the total power if they were all exactly 100%. The power is always a pretty rough estimate, but it gives me a vague idea of how much the factory is going to use. With the total machines, I could have the spreadsheet do the math for me and just tell me the very minimum amount of machines that I would need if I was going to fully overclock them. And then you just have to round up because I can't really place a half a machine. But I don't always completely overclock everything. So this column right here is what I add on, and this is kind of where I figure out how many machines I want to use. For a lot of the factories, I just reduce it to whatever the most convenient lowest possible number. So if for like the blenders, the very minimum amount I would need would be 7. I'm almost never going to want to play 7 machines. I'm pretty much always going to round that up to 8 if I was going to overclock them. For the rubber and plastic, the easiest number for me to use and still be able to overclock them by a good amount would be 12. And if I'm going to use 12 of each of those, I can easily underclock the other ones, albeit not quite as much, but I could match that same amount of machines, and then I can create 12 mini systems instead of having to deal with the full 800 heavy oil residue and the full 1600 water. I don't have to worry about how I'm going to split that up across how many different machines. I can just worry about 6 or 12 smaller systems that'll do the same thing. So that's what we have here. So since I need 12 of pretty much everything, and this has 2 of them, I'm going to need 6 of this blueprint. Even though they are separated into individual systems, the very initial amount, all of that crude oil, is going to have to all come in on one pipe. And I know I could add a little bit of pipe and use the blueprint auto connect, but I'm just going to add them. There's only 6 blueprints, so I'd actually rather it just be one solid piece instead of 2 small pipes. The way the overclocking breaks down, if I'm going to use 12 of these refineries, each one is going to intake 50 crude oil and give me 66 2/3 heavy oil residue and 33 1/3 polymer resin. That heavy oil residue goes into the blender, so double this number is what I need of water, and that'll create my 133 1/3 fuel. Now normally, I really try to avoid these numbers, but if you can make them all individual systems like this, and all of the numbers match up, and one machine pretty much just feeds into 1 or 2 other machines, it's gonna be fine. So that water is gonna come from the water extractor, which is gonna be right here. Now, the reason why I have this all laid out the way I do, this is obviously deep enough. Even this is deep enough. It'd be really nice to be able to place my blueprint here first, because there's a pipeline junction, which is what the water extractor will kind of snap to. So it snaps to the water extractor, but now as you can see at the bottom, it says the resource is not deep enough. And that's because it's being placed in the middle of a blueprint. So if I just do things in the opposite order, and I place my water extractor here first, and then I can place my blueprint on top of it. So that's basically the order. I'm just going to make sure these are actually lined up a little bit better. When dealing with the water extractor and the blueprint, that's really the only way I know of getting around it. The polymer resin is all going to get grouped up on this line, and then that'll feed into another set of refineries that's going to turn that all into rubber. And to give myself enough space, I had to put these right up to the edge of the blueprint designer, so I'm just going to have to deal with these pipes manually. That's okay. Oh, so that little bug is still in the game. These blueprint designers are too close, so when I loaded this one, it changed both of them. Well, I guess that's a little redundant then. Well, in that case, let me just build one, because it'll make things, I think, a little bit easier. Right here, I can't place the foundation underneath, so I'm going to use a lookout tower. Grab my water extractor, hold control, hit H and make sure, yep, all lined up. Now I can place it and delete my lookout tower. And now it's just 2 meters back from there, which also means that I'll probably be able to add in, half foundation on this side. But we'll do that later. And then for this, it's easiest just to get it close, lock it in place. And then it's just gonna line up right on the edge of the foundations. Terrific. With that built, now I can kind of show you. Each one of these blenders is gonna feed one of these blueprints. I definitely could have placed 2 of these in the same blueprint, and then that way it was one blueprint fed into one blueprint. Instead, I'm just going to place 2 of these because it just lets it be a little bit more flexible. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to lay out the top floor, and then when I finally made up my mind, I just placed them all instead of making a second blueprint that was just 2 of these combined. So this is the way it's going to line up, because I'm going to have these pipes come out this way, go up the back of the factory, and then in. And so they will be fed from up above and then go down. And then that way it should evenly get split. And with good old gravity, once it falls down that part, I don't really have to deal with too much sloshing. And the great thing with this setup is it's really easy to stagger the startup and make sure that I have completely full pipes. But that's getting a little ahead of myself. Let's go over how this works first. The plastic refinery is going to output 133 1/3. It'll go into a splitter. Half of it will go over here. The other half just goes into a merger, and that's what's going to head on into the train station. Half of this plastic goes over to the rubber. Half of the 133 is the 66 2/3. And we basically do the exact same thing, just on this side. So half of it feeds into the plastic, half of it will merge onto a line that's just going to head on into the train station. If you need way more rubber or way more plastic, then you're probably going to want to do a different setup. But if you need close to equal amounts of both, I love doing this kind of a setup. And there's just so many different ways to lay out the refineries and the pipes and the belts. You've just got so much flexibility and room to play with. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to place all my lookout towers first, and then my water extractors, and then I'll place the blueprint on top of it. So let me get those placed, and then I'll get the second floor, and then I'll show you how it all comes together. The bottom floor is all in place, so I've got all my water extractors, refineries, and blenders done. The basic pipe work is done. So I've got the main pipe that's going to feed in. This foundation right here is the very center of the whole factory, so I'm going to have the initial pipe plug in here. I would have liked to make it a little bit more centered between the actual inputs of the refineries, but I also really like the symmetry and would rather have that singular pipe plug in at the very center than it being off by 2 meters to the side. It's going to work just fine. Eventually, the pipe is going to be completely full, so I'm really not too worried about it. All of the polymer resin mergers are grouped together, so those are all going to go this way towards the train station. And then just on this side is where I'm going to place the 4 refineries that I need. Instead of the recycled rubber, these ones will be doing the residual rubber, and these are going to be completely overclocked. I have a total of 400 polymer resin. I'm going to turn it into 200 rubber. And for that, I just need 4. So I'll just need a few more foundations here. And that'll handle all the polymer resin for me. Because of the refineries, the second floor is pretty tall. I'm definitely going to need some pumps. I placed all the pumps on the ground first and then connected the pipes so that they're all exactly in the same spot. And then these are just going to head up here. I just need to grab this blueprint and get these lined up. These are going to take up exactly 3 foundations, and those ones took up 6. But just need to get these centered on the same thing, so I think as long as the split of the 2 blenders right there is on the middle of that foundation, so that should be exactly what I want. And I definitely want to make sure that my mergers are facing the right way, and the pipe is going the right direction. Perfect. And now I can put it in blueprint mode, and just spam down a couple more. I love that. Blueprints and the dimensional depot just make the end game so much easier than having to place all of these manually. And have to have just storage containers full of materials. And this isn't even that big of a build, but man, it sure does save time. What would have been really nice is if these pipes were going to be exactly lined up, but that was just not going to happen. So I'll figure out some way to make that look good. But for the rest of it, it's actually pretty easy. This side and that side are going to be collecting 800 plastic and rubber, and so I'm going to need to use my Mark 6. Now usually for plastic, I use the Swatch 1 because I really like the blue. But with the Mark 6 belts, the secondary color is kind of what the main part of the belt is. So I think with these, I'm just going to play around. Let's see, what if we do that blue and that blue? Yeah, I think something like that looks more like plastic. And now I only have to paint one of them that color, and all the rest of them I use if I be the same one. Oh, that looks cool. I like the Mark 6 belt so much. Now when it comes to the last one, I don't actually need this merger. So since the main belt is Mark 6, it may be really tempting to do this. However, I'm going to tell you now, for this particular setup, that is the wrong thing to do. What you need to do is use another Mark II belt, because you need these to be the same. And the reason for it is this is going to output 133 and a third. So since that's more than 120, I have to use a Mark III belt, which means that every 12 seconds, it's going to get a burst of 12 plastic. And because this is a Mark III belt, that's going to come out at 270 per minute. If this belt is a Mark 6, this can only take it once every, half a second, I think? Whereas the Mark 6 belt can take it much quicker than this one can even spit out. So it's only because that this belt is more than twice the speed of this one that these two need to be the same speed. Or else more will end up going this way, and then this little system ends up being starved for resources, which means then it'll stop creating fuel, and then you'll also starve those last ones making the residual rubber. You'll rob them of a little bit of their polymer resin, and so those will end up being a little bit less effective. But that is the plastic and rubber factory, essentially. It's a bunch of machines, but the whole system is relatively simple. These are one of those cases where I feel like it's really worth spending the time on blueprints, because once you get everything laid out, you just mass produce them. If you find that there's something wrong, I only need to delete a handful of things, fix it, and then just replace them, instead of spending an hour deleting a whole bunch of individual items. Thankfully, there's not a whole lot of the belt and pipe work left to do. I need to figure out a way to get the pipes from there up to here and make it look decent. The water is all taken care of. It just needed one pipe from the water extractors. And then all of these needed to be clocked to the 266 and 2/3. And thankfully for a number like this, it's pretty easy, because you can just do whatever the easiest fraction is. So for that specific number, if I do 800 divided by 3, that gives me 266 and 2/3. And the only other pipe I need is this one to go from here to there. I think I'm probably going to avoid having it run straight through where this oil extractor is going to go. Instead, I'll have it run this way and just kind of avoid these hills. And that way, I should be able to avoid a pump. Once the oil is fed in there, I need to load balance the polymer resin across the 4 machines. That's not too difficult. And then each one needs 100 water. That means I'll need 2 water extractors right here, each one overclocked to 200. I'll need to group up the final products, and then I'll just send them over to here. I'll probably just add some sinks right over here. Thankfully, they just fit in right in between the train tracks and the train station. Some good usable space. And that way I can just sink the plastic and rubber until I need it, but it's right here at the train station when I do. Just a little bit of busy work, and then some decorating and running power throughout the factory. I'll be right back. Welcome back to my new plastic and rubber factory. The oil extractor is fully overclocked, it's just not powered on. Basically the only thing that doesn't have power right now. Using the good old curve mode, we just go right around here. And then once I hit the factory, then I'm just running it right along the side of it. And that's where it plugs in. Each of these pillars originated because on the opposite side, the part of the factory that you can't see unless you come back here, this is what I did with the pipes. So it does look a little bit weird because they go straight through the sign. There are the wall holes, but those unfortunately don't stick through. So I guess maybe I could have tried to add a second one, but it's fine. So those just clip through the signs, and then they head up to the second floor and then just plug in right underneath. I decided not to have windows, but normally I would have it at the same level as the windows, and I just don't like when the walkway is like halfway through the windows. It just looks funny to me. So I try to avoid it, which meant my walkway was going to be at this level. Now the issue is if I wanted those to go straight, then they would pretty much just cut like right through where you would normally walk. And I think you would still be able to walk underneath it, but it just didn't quite feel right. It probably would have been a little bit more natural looking if I had those plug in and then the pipes were a little bit more straight instead of them coming in underneath the walkway, going over and then up. But they all have a pump, and thankfully, this is just within their limit, and I don't need a second one. With so many refineries, I figured this was a good candidate for an open factory with just no windows. And that way I have to worry about the smoke less. I designed these pillars on this side to deal with the pipes, and I do like symmetry, so I decided to just do the exact same thing on that side, and then that very first one hides my elevator. And it gave me a place to put all of these large billboards on both sides, which added some needed color, because most of this factory is either asphalt or the grip metal. And then instead of having it be flat or pointed or anything, I decided to try to make it look a little bit rounded. It goes ramp, double ramp, and then I just keep making it smaller. So I had to put 2 of the 2-meter ones, and then 4 of the 1-meter ones, and then just 3 foundations in the middle to make it flat. But that way it was a little bit more even. And here we've got my elevator. I do love these things. And the other thing I love about them is it just makes running the power up and down the factories just so much easier. The only thing I don't like is that this is directly in line with the button. So if you want the power connection to go like underneath, it runs straight through the button, and then it makes it harder to press. Or at the least, it just kind of looks weird. And you can't normally place these on the elevator. So I just place gate holes on the sides of them, and that way it gives me a spot to place the wall connections. And then for these, I just nudge it over the ½ meter so you can actually get it in the right spot. With all the refineries, I didn't want to run the power up onto the roof. I've done this in a few different factories. I just ran some painted beams along the ground, and that gives you just a convenient spot to place the wall outlets. All of the rubber is getting grouped up and heading down here, and all of the plastic is getting grouped up and heading down in that corner. That heads down here, and then snakes around these water extractors, heads over to here, and goes into the train station. For the initial startup, this one is obviously the plastic, and this one is the rubber line. So I've got a smart splitter set up, so none, none, and any. That way the first bit of rubber is all going to go to the storage container. As I mentioned before, one of the benefits to this setup is it's really easy to stagger the startup. I'm a big proponent of having all of your pipes completely full. I just think it makes the systems run a whole lot easier. I think that for most systems, it just works a lot smoother that way. The way the startup process is going to go, I'm going to power on the oil extractor, and that oil will flow in here. That'll get those refineries going and creating the heavy oil residue. That'll head into the blenders. The blenders will then make the fuel. The fuel will then go upstairs, and because those machines are powered on, they'll receive the fuel, but they don't have any plastic or rubber in them, so they won't actually turn on. This way I can let the machines, all of the pipes, all the way back to the oil extractor. I can let everything completely back up. What will get produced along with the heavy oil residue is some of that polymer resin. That polymer resin will come along over to here, go into these refineries, and get turned into rubber. And that rubber will end up in my storage container. Once all of the pipes are completely full and I'm ready to get this sucker turned on, I just delete the smart splitter and the storage container. I take all of that rubber, and then I just drop probably 50 into each one of these plastic refineries. Those need rubber to turn into plastic. Once it creates plastic, that'll feed into the rubber, and then half of that ends up going back into the other refinery, and we've created our endless loop of plastic and rubber production. Pretty cool, huh? Let's go ahead and get that crude oil flowing and see how long it takes to back up all of these pipes. Looks like the last heavy oil residue refinery is finally turned off. Let's go back to the oil extractor and make sure that it's backed up, but it should be because of the way that it kind of staggered all of them. Perfect timing. Means we should have, oh, nice healthy 1056 rubber in here. Just creating a whole bunch of stacks of 50, and so now when I go to each one of these, I can actually just hit the number 1. there's actually hotkeys to what's in the relevant items here. So I can hit 1 and move on. And it looks like we're reading between $7.99 and $8.01 for the plastic, and $9.98 and $1,002, I think, is the range for the rubber. I definitely want to make sure I check on it here and there, but it's looking good so far. That's an extra 1,000 rubber and 800 plastic, just being sunk for now, but ready to use for the next major project. Even though this one is a decent size in comparison to the last two I just made, blueprints really did make it pretty quick and easy to build, so I think I can squeeze in one more factory into this video. And for that, I'm going to head back out to the Eastern Dune Forest. So to get from here to there, right now my train's only option is to go this way, all the way up, through that canyon, and down. Now that I'm in Phase 5, I think it's finally time to connect the loop. I'll start by extending this rail line down the coast, then I'll cut through the grassy fields, and then this intersection right in between these two train stations, I'm going to have this line be the one that branches out, and that's going to connect the loop. I don't think that's actually going to change the path for any of the existing trains, but it's going to make traveling around the map a whole lot more convenient for me. And in the future, it'll be much easier to expand to the grassy fields once I have a train line going straight through it. And we're back. I've extended the train line, not all the way, but a pretty good distance. Far enough that I realized that I wanted to go back and grab my train. I figured this would be a good time to bring you along with me. Cross our fingers that I don't run into any of my trains. I got some pretty good distance. I actually thought it would make it farther. Here we are, to everybody's favorite starting area. Good old grassy fields. I actually really don't mind the grassy fields. I think it's a pretty good starting location. The train isn't too difficult. I think the biggest complaint is that most of the nodes are impure or just normal, and there really aren't too many pure nodes. I personally don't mind. I think it's pretty manageable in the early game. But I haven't used any of this stuff out here, and I really haven't quite figured out what I'm going to use it for. But at least now I have a train line. I'm going to continue this line this way, and I am going to aim for just to the right of that thing. If we take a look at the map, what I zoomed in should be that right there. So I want it to cut through those two pillars, and this is probably going to be the section of the train track that is the most elevated above the ground, just because it drops pretty far down where that lake is to where this is up here. And I just don't really feel like having it dip down and then go right back up. It's going to be quite a bit above the ground, but it also means I have to delete fewer of those giant purple trees, which I kind of would rather leave more of them in the game. They look cool. I brought the train line just to where I wanted. So now I'm over at the other side, right by my four-way intersection. One of them heads off this way, and then we just needed to ramp up a little bit. And then from here, I want to connect that to that. And I've got them at the same height. What I did was just lay down foundations all the way from here to there. That way I could bring up that last platform just to the right height. So I have that part taken care of. The way I've been doing my curves is I'll lay out 6 foundations. And then if I'm curving to the left, I work with the one on the right. If I hold control, I can place this foundation right on the corner of that one. And using the scroll wheel, I can get this into whatever angle I want it to go at. So I'll place it here, and I'll look. Nope, that would run right into that thing. So then I unlock it and try it a few more clicks. That's looking better. And then you nudge it down 4 meters, forward 4 meters, and then to the left 4 meters. Now I've got a real smooth connection between these two, and I know if I go out another 6 foundations, the two halves are even in length, and as long as it's not too extreme of an angle, it'll make a real nice curve going from one platform to the next one. The only problem is, trying to get the exact right angle to line up with that one is pretty impossible. So I'll use the best tool I have, the painted beam. Just like when I place the foundation, since I want this to curve to the left, I'm going to use the very outside foundation edge. So this corner right here, I'm going to click my beam once, and then I'm going to go on quite a journey and fly all the way over there. And now on this side, it's going to connect to the inside edge here. So I just want to look at this corner and go ahead and place it. And I did try to basically kind of work my way from the middle and start building it on this side and then build it on that side and have them meet in the middle. But they didn't actually line up quite right. So I think my best bet is just to work on one side, and I chose that side, and I'm going to build it all the way out, and then it'll just make that very last connection. Now that they're at the same height, I just need to get that line close, and being able to connect them will be pretty easy. So now on this side, I just want to grab my foundation. I want to snap it right to the edge of the beam, H to lock it in place, cage down twice, and then just nudge it into place. And then I'm going to do the same thing, although I have to place one, and then I can place the other 5. And unfortunately, this tree is going to have to go. Oh, I guess this one too. I won't have to kill too many of them, thankfully. Now I grab my blueprint, put it in Blueprint Auto Connect, click it once, get it over to here, lock it in place, and then just nudge it. Make sure everything looks good. Terrific. And now I should be able to just go in a straight line, so I can just delete all these temporary foundations. And then I do my usual. So I zoop out 10, and then 2 more. So that's about as far as the rail lines stretch. Now, unfortunately, the funny thing with this right here is the explosive rebar doesn't work. I've been wanting to try this on something. Somebody commented a long time ago that the pulse nobulists can actually be really cool at removing things because they kind of act like a little black hole. They just kind of grab whatever they get stuck to. Let's see. Well, it did still blow up a few things, but hey, got rid of what I was looking for. Cool. I'm finally going to have a loop around the whole world. I just need to connect these 2 tracks. Now we'll connect that side to that side. And then with my luck, a train would come this way and my train would block it. So I'm going to have to fly over there and replace it. Like I mentioned, this is probably where it's raised the highest off the ground. But that was just going to be a lot easier than dipping down. Could probably get it to just right above this thing. And then head up. And I just didn't want to deal with it. So in this one section, it's a little high off the ground. But you get to look down at all these cool purple trees. And now the loop is completed. I think that'll make getting from one side to the other a little bit quicker. So now I just need to grab my train. Then I'll see you when I get back over there. With the train loop complete, it's time to build another factory. For this one, I don't have to go too far. I'm going to take advantage of those 2 quartz nodes. Just have a couple of these gas pillars to take out. Let's go over the plan. This is going to be my big quartz tower. In comparison to my first quartz and silica tower, this one probably isn't going to be a whole lot bigger, but it is going to produce so much more. I've got 1 pure and 1 normal node, so in total 1800 raw quartz. And I'm going to be using the quartz purification alt recipes. This really confused me the very first time I actually picked it. There's 2 steps to this whole thing, right? You take the raw quartz, you mix it with the nitric acid, you get your quartz crystal, and then you also get dissolved silica. So when I open the dissolved silica alternate recipe, this is definitely an alternate recipe. What I didn't realize is you only need to pick one. For whatever reason, I just kind of assumed that I needed to keep scanning and find the second one, and I never even looked to see if I had the dissolved silica. Not really sure why that didn't dawn on me at first, but it kind of makes sense. With the distilled silica half of the alternate, I take that dissolved silica, I mix it with limestone and water, and then I get silica and some of that water back. 80% of it, actually. Back to the spreadsheet. Now you can see we're going to take the 1800 raw quartz, mix it with only 150 nitric acid, but thankfully that train station is built right on top of the nitrogen well, so I'll be able to pipe that over. I need to bring in a little bit of water, 375 limestone, and then 75 iron ore. I figured while I was here, I might as well try to knock out as much as I can. For most of the raw resources, I don't think it's worth refining them into the ingots or anything past that until you actually need them. Like for iron, copper, limestone. Caterium, however, is kind of special. For a lot of the other ores, you can actually get more ingots than the ore you're putting in. With Caterium, you're always going to get less ingots, even with the best alternate recipes. So Caterium is one of the few where it's much easier to transport the ingots than it is the actual ore. I've got 2 normal nodes nearby. I'm going to bring them both over here for a total of 1200 Caterium ore. Mix that with 1200 water, and I'll also be producing 600 Caterium ingots here. The train station's right nearby, so it'll be easy to get the nitrogen gas over here and take all of these finished products back to the train station, because they tend to be my logistics hubs of the area, and chances are I'm going to end up putting these on a train and shipping them somewhere else. Let me knock out this first layer of foundations. For this factory, I'm just going to build it right on top of the miners. So the bottom floor will be able to handle a little bit of my logistics, and then everything else will be just manufactured on top of it. Very basic bottom floor, just enough room for 2 miners. And here's what I think is enough space for the second floor. And I found this little guy over here, so we'll add him to the factory when it's all done. The only reason this factory is going to be the height that it is because the machines are so tall. There's only going to be 2 floors of manufacturing. This floor right here is going to do all of my quartz and silica. Then I'll add another floor, and that one will take care of all the Caterium. Thankfully, there's not too many machines required on this floor. Let's go ahead and start with the refineries, but I want to find the center point. So 9, here's our center. I need 6, so I'll line this up right on the very half of the center. And we'll do 3 on this side, and 3 on this side. This one's going to be using the quartz purification, and we are going to fully overclock this thing, which gives me just fantastic numbers to work with. 300 raw quartz for each machine. And if we go down here for the miners, this one's the normal node, so this one will be outputting 600, and that one will be outputting 1200. There's a whole bunch of different ways I could do it. What I'm going to do is just the simple load balancing, so I'm going to split that one in half, this one in quarters down here, and then I'm just going to keep it nice and clean up here. And then I'm just going to have a single belt lead into each one of these refineries. And that'll give me plenty of space to do the pipe work for the nitric acid. So the next step, I need 3 blenders right here. And those are going to be dealing with the dissolved silica. Since I have 6 refineries here, and it's going into 3 blenders, it's going to be easiest if I just go ahead and group these up ahead of time. So just to get the spacing right, I'm just going to put a lift there. And now I know how far out I can put my junction, and they're not going to clip into each other. Dissolved silica is kind of pinkish. Yeah, we'll go with copper pipes. And there we go. Good old straight mode. Get those all lined up. Each machine is outputting 150 dissolved silica. That's getting grouped up. And now that I know where this pipe is leading to, now it makes it a little bit easier to line this one up. So I just want this to feed straight into the blender. And I'm going to do that for each one of these. These will be using the distilled silica alternate. And these ones are also completely overclocked. That'll intake the 300 dissolved silica. I just need 125 limestone for each one, and then some water. It needs 250, but it's going to be outputting 200. That means each one of these blenders is missing 50 water per minute. In total, I'll need to bring in an extra 150 just for these 3. But we've dealt with excess water before. This is going to be simple. For this, I'm going to do something very similar to my aluminum setups. I'm going to use that modified VIP junction. I want my junction in line with here, so I'm going to set it 1 meter off. And that way when I rotate it, it'll be in the right location. And now I'm going to place a floor hole just right next to it. Delete this end, and we'll replace that pipe. So straight mode into here, and then straight mode from here to here. And now I want to switch it to horizontal to vertical and go straight down into there. The extra 50 water is going to come from the floor below, but this VIP junction will prioritize this pipe over this one. And now I can connect this pipe, and now all I need is that limestone. The last step for this floor is the nitric acid. And for that, I just need 2 blenders, and I've got just enough space over here. Perfect. And again, these are going to be completely overclocked. Each one needs 300 nitrogen gas, 75 water, 25 iron plates. The nitrogen and the water are all just going to be coming from the floor below, so I'll figure how I'm going to do that in a little bit. But the iron plates are going to be coming from right next to it. That, I'm going to place a constructor right over here. This one will be set to iron plates. And again, completely overclocked. To make 50 iron plates, I need 75 iron ingots. And thankfully for that, I just need 1 smelter. And you guessed it, completely overclocked. The iron ore will come from down below, then that'll feed into the constructor. And then from here, I just need to split it between the 2 blenders. The output of these 2 will get grouped together, head over this way, and then feed into this line of refineries. And that's all I need on this floor to turn 1800 rock quartz into 1125 quartz crystal and 2025 silica. Not too bad. Let me go ahead and add the last floor, and then we'll go through the Caterium setup. The 3rd floor is added and ready for machines. But before we do that, let me show you all the basic work that I did. We'll start here at the beginning. The quartz just feeds right into the refineries. And here is my crazy pipework for the nitric acid. This combines my 2 favorite ways to ensure systems with fluids just run really smooth. The first is, like always, I'm going to let all of this fill up completely ahead of time, so that whole pipe system is completely full. The second is feeding it from above, because with liquids, good old gravity works like a charm. And if we follow this pipe, it's just pretty simple. Just getting fed from the 2 blenders over there. Every machine that can output a fluid, so the refineries and the blenders and everything else, has a head lift of 10 meters. So that means as long as I keep this under 5 of these 2 meter foundations, I am in the clear. Those machines will provide just enough head lift. The finished quartz is just getting grouped together and then heading off here. It'll go downstairs and then head off into the train station. Same thing with the silica. But with this, I can't fit it all on 1 belt. I'm making 2025. It'll fit on 2 belts. If I split it in half though, that means that I'm going to have 0.5 on each belt. Pretty sure future me would absolutely hate that decision. Each blender is outputting 675 silica. 675 divided by 3 is 225. I'm splitting the middle one in thirds. And so this belt is going to have 1/3 plus the 675. So this one will have 900. And then the other belt will have the 2/3. So this one will have 1125. And those 2 numbers should be a bit easier to work with than each belt having 1012.5. Moving on to the last floor. Thankfully with power shards, instead of needing 50 refineries, I only need 20. Which is still a decent amount, but a whole lot better. I'm going to place 10 and 10, and then I'm going to have all of the outputs facing together, because even though all of the Caterium ore can fit on 1 belt, each group of 10 refineries needs their own 600 pipe of water. So let me go ahead and place 1, and we'll paint it with the Caterium finish, of course. And then using the pure Caterium ingot, completely overclocked, 60 ore, 60 water, gets me 30 ingots. Now I just need to spam down a whole bunch of these. Even though this is going to be a little bit tighter than I normally build, I also think it's going to be really nice to have it in a pretty compact spot. I didn't build this originally because I wasn't sure if I was going to need more space, but I'm pretty sure this is just enough. Load balancing 10 machines doesn't need more than 1.5 foundations, right? This side has a little bit better lighting, so let's do it on this side. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the nitric acid, and I'm going to have the pipes go up. And so I don't have to worry about those being in the way, and I've got all of this space for my belting. This row of 10 needs 600, so it's going to be really easy just to split the Caterium down below and just send up 2 belts of 600, one to each side. As I'm sure most of you can guess, it's just 2 5-way splits. The way I'm going to lay this out, so I want the part that's going to loop back to be the part that's on the very end. So to do that, I need one splitter is going to deal with 2 and then the part that loops back, and then the other one is going to deal with 3 refineries. So the part that gets looped back is the one that I want on the very end. That one is going to be placed right here. And that'll probably make a little bit more sense once I place this one, which is going to go right here. Now what I'm about to do is really rare for me, because I really like to see everything on the belts. But I also just really wanted things to fit in this tight space. So these splitters are just going to be right next to each other. That splitter goes there. And then to finish this off, I need a merger. And again, it's just going to be pressed right next to the splitter. And let's just do a little bit of belt work real quick. Each of these refineries needs 60. So I can just use Mark 1 belts for all of these. So there's the 5 refineries. And then this part is the one that gets looped back. If this whole row is getting 600, and I'm going to split that in half, that means 300 is going to be going into this merger. Once this loops back, that means this belt right here is going to be 360, which means 180 and 180. And now I just need to do the same thing on this side. This splitter will deal with these 3. This splitter will deal with the last 2. Here's the middle splitter, and then the final merger. Mark 1 belts from the machines. Mark 3 into those splitters. And then Mark 4 into this one. And then from here, I just need one more splitter. And we're just going to spin that one around. Place it right there in the middle. That'll be 300. That'll be 300. And those will just get fed from down below. So yes, manifolds are more space efficient. But really, this only takes up about one more foundation than it normally would. On the merging side, it's going to be more of what I'm not a huge fan of, but like I said, I just really wanted it to fit in the same amount of space. So we are going to press a lot of these mergers right next to each other. And then I am just going to be very careful and make sure that I have belts connecting all of them and that they're all the right speed. And the last one doesn't need one. Since each refinery is only outputting 30, I can just do Mark 1 belt from here. In total, this will be making 600, so I just need a Mark 5. 20 refineries is always going to take up a pretty good amount of space, but I'm pretty happy with how compact this ended up being. With all of those machines in place, next step is the water extractors, and I think I'm going to build those just right down here. That's not going to be anything fancy, let me just skip ahead. And just like that, I've got my water extractors. 5 in total, all of them completely overclocked. There's definitely a theme with this factory, isn't there? The Caterium floor needed 2 600 pipes, so we've got these 2 being grouped up together, and then these 2 being grouped up together. The Quartz floor needs exactly 300. Nitric acid needs 150 in total, each machine needs 75 water. The dissolved silica step, each blender is missing 50, and so that needs 150 in total. At this point, I'm really not sure how I'm going to decorate this, but I'll figure that out later. The pipes just come over here, go on a short little trip through the trees, and into the factory. I need 1 pump down there, and that's enough to get it up to this level. This pipe is going to the very next floor, and so it only needs the 1 more pump. But once we get up to here, I need another one to get all the way up. So I just needed 2 last pumps on this floor. Next step is to create a little belt and pipe highway that's going to go from here, pretty much in a straight line, I think, to the train station. That's going to bring in the nitrogen gas, the limestone, and the iron ore. And then I'll be sending 4 belts to the train station, 1 belt of quartz, 2 of silica, 1 of the Caterium ingots. I'll be able to use one sushi belt for both the iron ore and the limestone, and that's about it. And this is what I came up with. Of course, it's another blueprint. I needed to place enough of these that it just made sense. These don't quite match the same theme I was using for these factories over here. I used the same red signs, so I guess it's close. Since you can squeeze in 4 things on a foundation, it's just a little tight on the sides. I could have stacked these up and saved quite a bit of space. But as we've already established, I like seeing everything move around. So I'd much rather it just be on the same level and be a little bit wider instead. Those just go along here, and then when I needed to elevate, I just have my lifts in good old horizontal to vertical pipe mode. And then they head a little bit farther and do that again, and then into the factory. I've got more room for shenanigans on that side of things, and so it's going to be easier to do any sort of belt work getting things in the right order than it is over here in the factory. And so I did all of these lifts first and worked my way backwards, and that way I could put the belts in an order where they didn't have to overlap or go up and over each other. I've got my very simple load balancing over here. I just needed to elevate this one a little bit so that it didn't clip into the pipe, because it was in a convenient spot and I just didn't want to have to move it. And with the train station, I decided to just add on a little bit extra. It looks a little bit funny, but it's very functional because it gave me a whole bunch of more space. There's still a good amount of space down here underneath the train station, but I would really like to avoid it getting to the point where you just can't follow anything. Even though it's organized, it's still just a chaotic mess. So if I start giving myself just a little bit more space to work with, I can spread it out and hopefully I don't run into that. You're probably wondering what all of this is. So this belt right here is going to be coming from down there. And actually, it'd probably be best if I just showed you. So that belt is this one right here. I decided to just add it on to this belt. Trust me, you don't want to know how it's getting through there. But it just goes underneath this bus, goes down, comes over to here, and here's a merger. So this first one is coming from up here. That 600 Caterium ore coming from a normal node. So that's the first one that's getting joined up. The second belt here is coming from this madness. I'm using the majority of the iron ore out of these 4 miners, but this one is only using 296. So that means I can crank this up to another 75 and then just do a little bit of load balancing. So I've got a smart splitter. When I'm ready to turn this on, all I'm gonna do is change this to overflow. Any will be to the right. The faster speed belt will make sure that this Mark II belt is completely full. And then this is just a little bit of load balancing I need to do to take 120 down to 75. Split it in half. Here's 60, here's 60. Split it in half. There's 30, split that in half. Here's 15. 60 and 15. There's my 75. So this belt is going to have my iron ore and half of the Caterium. That goes all the way up and into the train station. With that part out of the way, this would probably make a little bit more sense. So that belt will lead into this smart splitter. Caterium ore is going to go straight ahead. Iron ore is going to go to the right. Caterium will go into this merger, which from this side is where the other Caterium belt is getting plugged in. At the very start of phase 4, I built the aluminum factory in this train station. That aluminum factory is built right on top of a normal Caterium node, and it's finally going to get used. That's getting belted from the aluminum factory over to the train station, and then through here, and it just merges up with this line. And then this will be my full 1200 line of Caterium ore that goes into that factory. The iron ore that's getting split off is going to go into this merger. This belt is coming from up here. And then over here. From right here. Because the limestone is actually going to be coming from the train. Taking a look at the map, as far as limestone goes, I could have used this node and just belted it over. Or there's even this one over here. But it's a pure node and I only need 375. And then down here at the blue crater, right next to this train station, is a normal limestone node. And I already have a train that's running in between these 2 train stations. It was easy to add on one more freight car and add the limestone. And then just a little bit of load balancing going from the 480 and the Mark IV belt down to the 375 that goes into the factory. Now it's time to add a little bit of decoration and run power throughout the factory. Welcome back to my new Quartz, Silica, and Caterium tower. Let's go for a quick little tour so I can show you what I've added. All of the ore is turned on, and I'm just using my smart splitter trick. When I'm ready to turn it on, I'll just delete these in the sinks, and the material will flow right on into the factory. I obviously had to add a hyper tube because I've got a whole bunch in this area. Just like the others, the entrance is right at the train station. But I've also got these small entrances on either side. We can start over here at the water extractors. I wanted to go with a similar style to what I did with these water extractors for this copper setup. It's just alternating a layer of foundation, the pillars, foundation, pillars. Not too much has changed on the inside. Just added a walkway to go up and over all the pipes. And instead of a doorway, it's just one big entrance. The pipes just come through the roof basically, head on over here, and then off into the factory. Nice and simple. For these pillars, if you want to get this sort of pattern, I'm just alternating the inner corner quarter pipe and the inverted inner corner quarter pipe. I try to say that 10 times fast. And instead of using walls, I went with a whole bunch of the big concrete pillars. I've just got a row of those to kind of frame the windows. And then the second floor is just the Caterium color, but same sort of style. This factory ended up getting decently tall, and so if I took this floor and wanted it to go straight out, on this side of the factory, it would run into the cliff and that would be fine. On this side of the factory, it would go really far out, and I just didn't want my roof to overtake this whole area. I went with a bunch of ramps to slope it down into it instead. And I'm real happy with the way that it turned out. Of course, I had to add a couple of fans on top. There's a lot of refineries on that floor. Gotta get the smoke out somehow. Both sides of the factory have these floor entrances, so we can just come up through here. And we've got all of the craziness down here. So this is the logistics floor, so pretty much everything is coming in or going out right here. This right here is the one sushi belt that has the limestone and the iron. The limestone gets split off here and goes to the silica. The iron gets split off and goes to the back of the factory, and that gets turned into the iron plates for the nitric acid. Of course, I have an elevator in the corner. First floor is silica. Oh, hey, look. We've got a friend. Oh, encased industrial beams. Thanks, buddy. For the power on both floors, I went with the same trick I've been using real recently, with the beams just running along the floor, and that just keeps a little bit of the cable clutter out of the way, and it's a little bit easier than running them straight through the machine onto the floor below. The 1200 belt of Caterium is just getting split below, so here is 600, and then that lift will have the other 600. There's 600 water, here's the other 600 water. Lots more concrete pillars instead of the walls. It gives it a different look, and I like it. You know, I'm not really sure if my doggo can take an elevator. I don't think I've tried that yet. This floor needs a glass floor in the corner, so now I can get around. The main thing that I added to both of the floors is the throughput monitor for the final products. I think we all know pipes can be a little finicky, and getting the full 600 throughput out of a Mark II pipe is not always easy. But because the water is being fed from up above, this should work out really well, especially when you turn on the water extractors ahead of time and let these pipes completely fill up. Since the machines are already powered on, they're completely full of water, and all of these pipes are completely full, backed up all the way to the water extractors. And I even did the same thing with the nitric acid. Now, normally I don't really like to do that because the nitric acid actually needs the manufacturer, and I kind of like having all the machines turn on at once. But to completely fill up that pipe, it's going to take quite a while, and I want that pipe to be completely full It just gives me a little bit more peace of mind that I just shouldn't ever have to worry about it. Using the good old dimensional depot, I just grabbed 2 stacks of iron plates, and this is what's left. It took about 140 iron plates for each machine to completely fill up this whole pipe and all of the refineries. Because all of these, since they're turned on, they are now completely full with their nitric acid. I could take the iron plates out of there, but it is going to take a little bit for the iron plates to start being made and start feeding these machines again. So I'm just going to leave that buffer of iron plates in there. And it'll let this whole system start up ridiculously fast this way. This factory is going to get started so fast that I'm going to do it in 2 stages, the Quartz, and then I'm going to do the Caterium afterwards, just so I can actually watch it come to life. First step for the Quartz, I'm going to turn on the miners because they take about 10 seconds to actually turn on for some reason. And then I'm going to go delete that smart splitter. And here we go. Because the machines are so bursty, I think this number is just going to fluctuate. Don't think it's going to solidly read 1125. And surprisingly, with fewer machines, the Silica is less bursty. Hey, I'll take it. These are the numbers I was looking for. And that's the Quartz floor done. Let's go back downstairs and get the Caterium started. And let's send this one in. And just like that, we're already up to 600 Caterium ingots per minute. And it even looks pretty good doing it. I added on 4 new sinks to this train station just to handle all the new products. And there we go, just the numbers I was looking for. It looks like the 600 and the 900 can stay pretty steady. The 1125 belts, those are just at one of those numbers that it's just going to bounce around a little bit. As long as they're not too long. I really do like belt highways. It's just fun watching all these materials shoot back and forth between the factory and the train station. And that is going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for being here. And a special thank you to those that like, comment, share, and hype the videos. It really does help the channel. So thank you very much. I feel like Ada should be proud. Today was very productive. Starting phase 5, got the first few milestones unlocked. Then built 2 factories to handle those 2 new parts. So now I have 60 time crystals per minute and 225 trigons per minute. And then I started building up more factories to handle the parts that I'll need for my bigger power plant at the end. I added an extra 800 plastic and 1000 rubber, over 1000 quartz crystal, over 2000 silica, and 600 Caterium ingots. This nearby aluminum factory has been fantastic, and up until now, it's produced more than I need. However, here at the end game, a lot of these parts start needing a lot more aluminum. A bigger aluminum factory is what I'm going to be working on in the next video, and for that, I think I'm going to head out to the swamp. So look forward to that, and thanks for watching.